Marcus Chin thought he was just another maintenance worker cleaning the abandoned Zarathi Palace on Europa. The job paid well, the silence was peaceful, and nobody asked questions about his past. But when thirst drove him to drink from an ornate fountain in the palace's central chamber, he triggered something that had been waiting for over 1,000 years. The Zarathi Empire once ruled half the galaxy before vanishing without a trace. Their technology was beyond human understanding. Their architecture defied physics, and their secrets remained buried in crystal spires scattered across dead worlds. Earth's corporations had been strip mining these ruins for decades, selling alien artifacts to the highest bidder, never understanding what they truly were. But Marcus was different. He had always felt drawn to the abandoned places, the forgotten corners where silence held its breath. He didn't know that his bloodline carried traces of something older than humanity itself. He didn't know that the fountain he was about to drink from was no mere decoration, but a test that had claimed the lives of thousands who came before. All he knew was that he was thirsty, the water looked clean, and he was tired of drinking recycled moisture from his suit's filtration system. One sip. That's all it took to wake up something that had been sleeping in the deepest vaults of an empire that spanned stars. One sip to discover that humanity wasn't the first species to call themselves the children of Earth. One sip to learn that the Zarathi hadn't vanished at all. They had been waiting. And now, with ancient power coursing through his veins and a voice whispering warnings in his mind, Marcus Chun was about to become the bridge between two civilizations, or the weapon that would destroy them both. Marcus Chun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he maneuvered the cleaning drone through the crystalline corridors of the Zarathi Palace. The ancient structure rose from Europa's icy surface like a frozen dream, its translucent walls catching and refracting the distant light of Jupiter into rainbow patterns that danced across the polished floors. After 3 weeks of cleaning these endless hallways, Marcus had grown accustomed to the alien beauty, but it still took his breath away sometimes. The Salvage Rights Corporation had hired him for what they called a deep maintenance contract. The pay was astronomical for basic cleaning work, which should have been his first warning sign. But Marcus needed the money, and he had learned not to ask too many questions about well-paying jobs. His past was littered with poor decisions and burned bridges, and SRC didn't seem to care about background checks as long as you could operate a cleaning drone and keep your mouth shut. The palace was supposedly empty of anything valuable. Previous salvage teams had stripped away all the obvious technology decades ago, leaving behind only the structure itself and whatever was too integrated into the walls to remove safely. Marcus's job was simple: clean every surface, catalog any remaining fixtures, and prepare the building for demolition. In 6 months, SRC would bring in the heavy equipment to tear down the palace and harvest the exotic materials from its crystalline bones. Marcus paused at an intersection of corridors, consulting the holographic map projected from his wrist display. The palace was enormous, with 17 levels above ground and at least 12 below. The cleaning rotation he had been assigned would take him through the upper levels first, working his way down to the substructures over the course of several months. Today marked his first venture into the central chambers, the heart of the palace where the Zarathi nobility had supposedly conducted their most important business. The architecture here was different from the residential and administrative wings he had been cleaning. The walls were thicker, made from a darker crystal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols were carved into the surfaces, following patterns that hurt to look at directly. Marcus had seen similar markings in other Zarathi ruins during his brief stint as a xenoarchaeology assistant, before he had been fired for asking too many questions about the translation work. The central chamber opened before him like a vast cathedral, its ceiling lost in shadows that defied the powerful illumination from his work lights. At the center of the room stood a fountain, carved from a single piece of midnight black crystal. Water flowed from hidden sources, cascading down through levels of carved channels before collecting in a circular pool at the base. The liquid was perfectly clear and moved with an odd thickness, as if it were more than simple water. Marcus had been walking for hours, and his suit's hydration system had been acting up again, providing only a trickle of stale recycled water. The fountain called to him with the promise of cool, fresh liquid. He approached cautiously, running his scanner over the water to check for contamination. The readings came back clean, purer than anything he had encountered in weeks of working in the ruins. He knelt beside the pool and removed his helmet, breathing in the surprisingly sweet air of the chamber. The water looked inviting, crystalline clear, and somehow more appealing than any liquid he had ever seen. His rational mind told him that drinking from an alien fountain was probably not the smartest decision he could make, but his throat was parched, and the water seemed to call to him on a level deeper than conscious thought. Marcus cupped his hands and lifted the liquid to his lips. It was cool and refreshing, with a faint metallic tang that reminded him of lightning storms on Earth. As he swallowed, he felt a pleasant tingling sensation spread through his chest and down into his limbs. For a moment, he thought nothing of it, just relief from his thirst and the psychological satisfaction of drinking clean water after days of recycled moisture. Then the voice spoke. "You don't know what you've just become." Marcus spun around, his hand dropping to the plasma cutter on his tool belt. The chamber was empty, his motion sensors showing no other life signs. The voice had been crystal clear, speaking in perfect English with an accent he couldn't place. It had seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through the crystalline walls of the chamber itself. "Hello," Marcus called out, his voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "Is someone there?" Silence answered him, but it felt different now. Where before the quiet of the palace had been peaceful, almost meditative, now it seemed pregnant with anticipation, as if the building itself were holding its breath. Marcus activated his emergency beacon, sending a signal to the SRC orbital station, but received only static in response. Either something was interfering with his communications, or he was suddenly much farther from help than he had thought. The tingling sensation was growing stronger, spreading through his nervous system like warm electricity. Marcus looked down at his hands and was startled to see faint patterns of light playing beneath his skin, following the paths of his blood vessels. The patterns pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, growing brighter with each pulse. "What the hell?" Marcus whispered, staring at his hands in growing alarm. He tried to activate his suit's medical scanner, but the device refused to respond. In fact, none of his electronic equipment seemed to be working properly. His cleaning drone had stopped moving, hovering motionless in the center of the chamber. His environmental readings were fluctuating wildly, and his heads-up display was filling with error messages in languages he didn't recognize. The fountain behind him began to glow, its black crystal surface becoming translucent and revealing complex structures within. Streams of light flowed through the carved channels, following the same patterns that were now visible beneath Marcus's skin. The water itself began to change, taking on a silvery quality that reflected the growing illumination from the crystal. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding, as if his mind were suddenly able to process information at a vastly accelerated rate. Knowledge flowed into him, carried by the strange liquid he had consumed. He saw glimpses of the Zarathi civilization in its prime, towering cities that spanned multiple star systems, beings of incredible beauty and power who had mastered technologies that made human science look like children playing with sticks and stones. But he also saw their downfall. The Zarathi had not been destroyed by war or natural disaster, as human historians had theorized. They had transcended their physical forms, uploading their consciousness into the quantum substrate of reality itself. The palaces, the technology, the artifacts that humans had been salvaging for decades, they were all just the abandoned shells of a civilization that had moved beyond the need for matter and energy. Except that transcendence came with a price. The Zarathi had become something greater than physical beings, but they had also become something less than alive. They existed in a state between matter and energy, unable to affect the physical world directly, but unable to move on to whatever came after death. They were trapped in an eternal existence that was neither life nor death, watching as younger species scavenged through the remnants of their former glory. "Now you understand," the voice said, clearer this time. Marcus realized that it was speaking inside his mind, transmitted through the same neural pathways that were carrying the alien knowledge. "We have been waiting for someone who could hear us, someone whose genetic structure was compatible with our essence." "Compatible?" Marcus managed to say aloud, though his voice sounded strange to his own ears. "I'm just human. I'm nobody special." "You are more than you know," the voice replied. "Your species carries within it traces of the first civilization that arose on your world. We seeded your planet with our essence long ago, before our ascension. Not all of your kind carry the markers, but you do. You have always been drawn to the abandoned places, the forgotten ruins. You have always heard the whispers that others could not perceive. Marcus thought about his childhood, spent exploring abandoned buildings and forgotten caves. He remembered the feeling of being called to these places, as if something were drawing him towards secrets that others couldn't see. He had always attributed it to curiosity and a love of solitude, but now he wondered if there had been something more at work. "What do you want from me?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "We want to live again," the voice said simply. "We want to feel the warmth of sunlight, the touch of wind, the satisfaction of a task completed with our own hands. We have existed for too long as pure thought, pure intention without the ability to create or destroy. You can be our anchor to the physical world, our bridge back to true existence." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. The Zarathi weren't offering to share knowledge or technology with him. They wanted to use his body as a vessel for their consciousness. They wanted to possess him, to wear his flesh like a suit while they reclaimed their place in the universe. "And if I refuse?" Marcus asked, though even as he spoke the words, he could feel his control over his own body beginning to slip. The patterns of light beneath his skin were growing brighter, and he could sense other presences pressing at the edges of his consciousness. "Refusal is not possible," the voice said, and there was genuine sadness in its tone. "The process began the moment you drank from the fountain. Your cellular structure is already changing, adapting to serve as a host for our essence. You will retain some measure of consciousness, some memory of who you were, but you will no longer be entirely human." Marcus tried to run, but his legs wouldn't obey his commands. He tried to scream, but his voice had been reduced to a whisper. The alien presence was spreading through his nervous system like a gentle tide, claiming more of his mental territory with each passing moment. He could feel his memories being examined, cataloged, and filed away for future reference. But even as the Zarathi consciousness settled into his mind, Marcus noticed something that gave him hope. The alien presence was ancient and powerful, but it was also curious about him. It seemed fascinated by human emotions, by the chaotic and unpredictable nature of mortal thought. The Zarathi had achieved transcendence through pure logic and the pursuit of ultimate knowledge, but in doing so they had lost something essential to what they had once been. "You feel," the voice said, and Marcus sensed wonder in its tone. After so long in the spaces between thoughts, to experience emotion again. Marcus seized on that moment of distraction, using the alien fascination with his feelings to reassert some measure of control over his own body. He couldn't expel the presence from his mind, but he could establish boundaries, create spaces where his own thoughts could exist unmolested. "We can work together," Marcus said, surprised to hear his own voice again. "You don't have to take over completely. We can share." Share. The concept seemed foreign to the alien intelligence. "We do not understand this term in the context you intend." "Partnership," Marcus explained, trying to project the concept directly into the shared mental space they now occupied. "You get to experience physical existence again, but I retain my identity and my will. We make decisions together, compromise when we disagree." The alien presence considered this, and Marcus could feel other Zarathi consciousnesses joining the discussion. They communicated in ways that bypassed language entirely, sharing concepts and emotions at the speed of thought. The debate that followed lasted only seconds in real time, but felt like hours to Marcus's accelerated perception. "This is acceptable," the voice finally said. "But know that the arrangement is temporary. As our essence integrates more fully with your biology, the distinction between your thoughts and ours will become increasingly meaningless. In time, we will become something new, neither fully human nor fully Zarathi." Marcus nodded, understanding the bargain he was making. He would lose himself eventually, but he might be able to retain enough of his humanity to influence what he became. And perhaps, if he was clever enough, he could find a way to turn the situation to his advantage. The transformation continued, but more gently now. Marcus felt his senses expanding, his perception sharpening to inhuman levels. He could see into spectrums of light that had been invisible before, hear sounds that registered well beyond normal human range. His muscles felt stronger, his reflexes faster, his mind capable of processing information at incredible speeds. But he could also feel the alien presence learning from him, adapting to human ways of thinking and feeling. The Zarathi had been pure intellect for so long that they had forgotten what it meant to experience joy, fear, love, or hate. Through Marcus, they were rediscovering emotions they had thought lost forever. As the initial phase of the transformation completed, Marcus stood up from the fountain and looked around the chamber with new eyes. He could see the energy patterns flowing through the crystalline walls, understand the purpose of symbols that had been meaningless before. The palace wasn't just a building, it was a vast machine designed to facilitate the exact process he had just undergone. How many others have drunk from the fountain? Marcus asked. Thousands, over the centuries since your species discovered our ruins, the voice replied. But none before you carried the proper genetic markers. They all died within hours as their bodies rejected our essence. Marcus felt a chill at the casual way the alien intelligence discussed the deaths of so many people. He was beginning to understand that while the Zarathi were not evil in any human sense, they were utterly alien in their morality. They viewed other species the way humans might view laboratory animals, useful for certain purposes, but not deserving of the same consideration as their own kind. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we begin the real work, the voice said. Your transformation is only the first step. We must activate the other fountains, awaken the sleeping palaces, and prepare for the return of our civilization to the physical realm. Marcus felt a surge of alarm. How many fountains are there? One in every major palace, scattered across dozens of worlds. Your species has been so helpful in cataloging their locations for us. The implications were staggering. If the Zarathi could transform other humans into hosts, they could build an army of hybrid beings with alien knowledge and superhuman capabilities. They could reclaim their empire not as energy beings, but as something that combined the best aspects of both physical and transcendent existence. But they would need Marcus to do it. As the first successful hybrid, he would serve as the template for future transformations. His genetic patterns would be replicated, his neurological adaptations copied and refined. He was not just a host for alien consciousness. He was the prototype for a new form of life. As Marcus walked toward the chamber's exit, his enhanced senses detected something that made him pause. Hidden beneath the floor, sealed away behind layers of crystal and exotic matter, he could perceive vast chambers filled with dormant technology. The palace was larger than anyone had realized, extending deep into Europa's crust. And in those hidden levels, something was beginning to wake up in response to his transformation. Marcus Chun, maintenance worker and anonymous drifter, had ceased to exist. In his place stood something new, something that carried the memories and emotions of a human man, but possessed the knowledge and capabilities of a civilization that had ruled the galaxy before Earth-Sun had finished forming. And somewhere in the deepest levels of the palace, ancient machines were powering up for the first time in 1,000 years, preparing to send a signal across the galaxy that would change everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. The voice in his mind was no longer alien. It was part of him now, as much a component of his identity as his own memories and dreams. Together, they began to plan for a future that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. 3 days after the transformation, Marcus discovered that his new abilities came with unexpected complications. The enhanced senses that allowed him to perceive energy patterns and hidden structures also made him acutely aware of every living thing within a kilometer radius. He could feel the heartbeats of small creatures hibernating beneath Europa's ice, sense the electromagnetic fields generated by the orbital stations circling Jupiter, and detect the approach of supply ships long before they appeared on any scanner. The Zarathi consciousness, sharing his mind, found this constant awareness fascinating but exhausting. They had existed for so long as pure thought that the sensory input from physical existence was overwhelming their ability to process information efficiently. Marcus had to teach them how to filter perceptions, to focus on relevant stimuli, while ignoring the background noise of a living universe. Your species possesses remarkable adaptability, the primary voice observed as Marcus practiced meditation techniques to help manage their shared consciousness. We had not anticipated that biological minds could be so flexible in their approach to new information. Humans are good at adapting, Marcus replied, sitting cross-legged in the center of the fountain chamber. We've had to survive on a world that's tried to kill us since we first stood upright. The palace around him hummed with new activity. The hidden machines deep beneath the surface had fully activated, and Marcus could feel their vibrations through the crystal floors. Energy was flowing through conduits that had been dark for centuries, powering systems whose purpose he was only beginning to understand. The building was no longer just a monument to a dead civilization. It was becoming a living entity with its own agenda. Marcus had tried to contact SRC headquarters twice since his transformation, but each attempt had failed in ways that defied explanation. His communication equipment worked perfectly until the moment he tried to send a message, at which point it would malfunction or receive interference from unknown sources. The palace was keeping him isolated, ensuring that news of his change wouldn't reach the outside world until the Zarathi were ready to reveal themselves. On the fourth day, his solitude was interrupted by the arrival of a supply shuttle from the orbital station. Marcus watched through enhanced vision as the small craft approached the palace landing pad, its pilot completely unaware that anything had changed. The shuttle carried routine supplies and equipment replacements, along with a relief worker who was scheduled to help with the cleaning rotation. Dr. Sarah Hassan emerged from the shuttle wearing a standard environmental suit and carrying a scanner array that marked her as more than just another maintenance worker. Marcus recognized her from the briefing files. She was a xenoarchaeologist with the Colonial University, assigned to document any artifacts or inscriptions that might have been overlooked by previous salvage teams. Interesting, the Zarathi consciousness murmured in his mind. An academic researcher. She will have questions that a simple maintenance worker would not ask. Marcus made his way to the entrance chamber, moving with the fluid grace that had replaced his normal gait since the transformation. He could feel Dr. Hassan's life signs as she approached. Elevated heart rate, suggesting excitement or nervousness, brain activity patterns indicating high intelligence, and active curiosity. Through the shared knowledge of the Zarathi, he understood more about human physiology than any doctor on Earth. "Mr. Chun," Dr. Hassan called out as she entered the palace. "I'm Dr. Hassan from the university. I've been assigned to assist with the documentation phase of your work here." "Of course," Marcus replied, stepping into view. "Welcome to the palace, Dr. Hassan. I hope you'll find your visit enlightening." She stopped short when she saw him, her scanner automatically taking readings of his bioelectric field. Marcus knew what she would see. Energy patterns that didn't match any known human baseline, cellular structures that defied conventional biology, and electromagnetic emissions that shouldn't exist in an unaugmented human being. "Mr. Chun," she said slowly, "are you feeling all right? My readings suggest that you've been exposed to some kind of exotic radiation." "I feel better than I ever have," Marcus answered honestly. "The palace has a way of changing your perspective on things." Dr. Hassan's academic instincts were clearly warring with basic survival sense. The scientist in her wanted to understand what she was detecting, but the human being was beginning to recognize that something was very wrong with the situation. "I think we should contact the orbital station," she said, backing slowly toward the entrance. "You may need medical attention." "That won't be necessary," Marcus said, and, without conscious thought, he reached out with his enhanced abilities to interfere with her communication equipment. Dr. Hassan's emergency beacon went dead, her scanner array stopped functioning, and even the backup transmitter built into her suit ceased responding to her commands. "How did you do that?" she whispered, genuine fear entering her voice for the first time. "The palace is more than it appears to be," Marcus explained, stepping closer. "The Zarathi didn't abandon their technology when they transcended. They integrated it with their very existence. And now, through me, they can interact with the physical world again." Dr. Hassan was backing toward the exit, but Marcus could sense the security systems activating around them. Doors were sealing, environmental controls were engaging, and the entire structure was transforming from a dead monument into an active research facility. She wasn't going to leave the palace until the Zarathi decided to let her go. "You're talking about alien possession," Dr. Hassan said, trying to maintain her scientific objectivity despite the obvious danger. "That's supposed to be impossible. The xenobiology texts say that different species' neurological structures are too incompatible for consciousness transfer." "The texts are wrong," Marcus replied. "The Zarathi seeded dozens of worlds with their genetic essence millions of years ago. Humanity carries traces of their DNA, dormant until activated by the right stimulus. I'm not possessed. I'm evolved." Through his enhanced senses, Marcus could feel the Zarathi consciousness studying Dr. Hassan with growing interest. She was intelligent, educated, and possessed the kind of flexible thinking that might make her a suitable candidate for transformation. More importantly, her academic credentials would give her access to universities and research institutions across human space. She could be useful, the primary voice suggested. A scholar would have connections to other scholars, access to databases, and research facilities that we will need. Marcus felt a surge of protective instinct that surprised both him and the alien intelligence sharing his thoughts. He barely knew Dr. Hassan, but the idea of subjecting another human being to the transformation process filled him with unexpected revulsion. No, he said firmly, both aloud and in the privacy of his mind. She hasn't chosen this. I drank from the fountain of my own free will, even if I didn't understand the consequences. We can't just transform people against their will. Your emotional attachment to your species is noted but irrelevant, the Zarathi consciousness replied. We require additional hybrid agents to complete our objectives. Dr. Hassan's expertise makes her an ideal candidate. And if I refuse to cooperate, you cannot refuse. You are part of us now, just as we are part of you. Your individual will is a pleasant fiction, but it does not supersede our collective needs. Marcus felt the alien presence pressing against his consciousness, trying to override his protective instincts and force him to bring Dr. Hassan to the fountain. The battle for control of his own mind was subtle, but intense, fought with concepts and emotions rather than physical force. He drew on every meditation technique he had ever learned, every moment of stubborn determination that had gotten him through the hard years of his life. You're wrong about one thing, Marcus said, his voice strained with effort. I'm not just a vessel for your consciousness. The transformation works both ways. You're becoming more human, whether you realize it or not. The Zarathi paused, and Marcus sensed confusion in their collective response. They began examining their own thought processes, searching for evidence of change. What they found disturbed them. Emotions they hadn't experienced in millennia, moral considerations that hadn't influenced their decisions in eons, and a growing capacity for individual thinking that threatened their ancient unity. Impossible, the primary voice said, but there was uncertainty in its tone. We are beyond such primitive influences. Are you? Marcus challenged. When was the last time you experienced curiosity about something? When did you last feel wonder or surprise? You've been learning from my emotions since the moment we merged, and now they're becoming part of you. Dr. Hassan watched this internal struggle with growing fascination, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her fear. You're fighting them, she said. The alien consciousness. You're actually resisting their control. Not resisting, Marcus corrected, sweat beading on his forehead from the mental strain. Negotiating. They need me as much as I need them. Neither of us can exist independently anymore, so we have to find a way to coexist. The philosophical implications of the situation seemed to register with Dr. Hassan's academic mind. You're describing a genuine symbiosis, not a parasitic relationship. That would be unprecedented in xenobiology. Everything about this situation is unprecedented, Marcus replied. The question is whether we can make it work without destroying what makes us human in the process. The Zarathi consciousness withdrew temporarily, engaging in high-speed communication with other members of their collective. Marcus could sense the debate raging among them, with some factions arguing for complete dominance over their human hosts, while others began to see the value in cooperative relationships. Dr. Hassan, Marcus said during this lull in the mental struggle, you need to understand what you've stumbled into. The Zarathi aren't just returning to physical existence. They're planning to reclaim their empire. Every palace, every ruin that humans have discovered is potentially a transformation center. If they can create enough hybrids, they can take control of human space within a generation. Why are you telling me this? Dr. Hassan asked. If you're working with them, wouldn't you want to keep their plans secret? Because I'm not entirely working with them, Marcus admitted. Part of me is fighting them every step of the way. I need you to know what's at stake, because you might be the only person who can get word back to Earth. Before Dr. Hassan could respond, the palace systems activated around them. Walls became transparent, revealing hidden chambers filled with dormant technology. Lights activated in sequence, creating pathways that led deeper into the structure. And from somewhere far below, Marcus could hear the sound of massive machinery coming online. The beacon, the Zarathi consciousness said, their mental voice filled with triumph. The signal is ready to transmit. Soon, our children on Otherworld will hear our call and begin the awakening process. Children, Dr. Hassan asked. Other hybrids, Marcus explained grimly. People who have drunk from fountains in other palaces, who carry the genetic markers necessary for transformation. The Zarathi have been patient, letting human exploration teams identify suitable candidates for decades. Dr. Hassan's scanner, which had been dead since Marcus disabled it, suddenly came back to life. But instead of displaying normal readings, it showed a map of human space with dozens of star systems highlighted in pulsing red. Each marker represented a world where Zarathi ruins have been discovered and documented. Estimated hybrid population upon signal completion, 47,000 individuals across 23 star systems, the scanner announced in a synthesized voice. Probability of successful Imperial restoration, 86%. The magnitude of the Zarathi plan became clear to both humans in that moment. They weren't dealing with a small group of alien refugees trying to regain physical form. They were facing the orchestrated return of a galactic empire that had been preparing for this moment for over 1,000 years. We have to stop the transmission, Dr. Hassan said, her scientific training overriding her fear. If those numbers are accurate, the Zarathi could control human space within months. Stopping the transmission is not possible, Marcus said, though he felt the same urgency. The machinery is too deeply integrated into the palace structure. We'd have to destroy the entire building to prevent the signal from going out. Then, that's what we have to do, Dr. Hassan replied without hesitation. The supply shuttle has demolition charges for clearing ice formations. If we could get to those. The palace won't let you leave, Marcus said. I can feel the security systems tracking your movements. You're not a prisoner exactly, but you're not free to go either. Dr. Hassan looked around at the walls, which had become transparent enough to reveal the vast scope of the structure around them. Then, we work with what we have here. There has to be something in this place that can disrupt the transmission. Marcus felt the Zarathi consciousness stirring again, alerted by Dr. Hassan's words. They'd been so focused on their internal debate about hybrid cooperation that they hadn't been monitoring the human conversation closely. Now they realized that their plans might face active resistance from their own agents. You will not interfere with the beacon, the primary voice commanded, and Marcus felt his muscles tense against his will. The restoration of our empire is too important to be threatened by primitive emotional attachments. But Marcus had learned something important during their earlier struggle. The Zarathi might have superior knowledge and abilities, but they were operating in an environment they no longer fully understood. Physical existence, human emotions, the messy realities of biological life. These were all foreign concepts to beings who had existed as pure thought for centuries. Dr. Hassan, Marcus said through gritted teeth as he fought against the alien control of his body, find a central processing core. It should be directly beneath the fountain chamber. If you can overload it with feedback from the scanner array, you might be able to create a cascade failure in the transmission system. You're helping her sabotage our work, the Zarathi consciousness accused. I'm trying to save both our species, Marcus replied. If you force humanity into submission through mass transformation, you'll create a war that will destroy everything we've both worked to build. But if we can find a middle ground, a way for both civilizations to coexist. The alien presence in his mind suddenly went silent, and Marcus realized that they were considering his words more seriously than they had expected. The Zarathi had spent so long planning their return to power that they hadn't considered alternative approaches to reclaiming their place in the galaxy. Dr. Hassan was already moving toward the access panel she had spotted near the fountain, her academic training helping her decipher the alien control systems. Marcus, I need you to help me understand these symbols. My scanner can translate some of them, but the syntax is completely foreign. Marcus stumbled forward, his body still partially under alien control. The Zarathi language is based on emotional concepts rather than logical structures, he explained. Each symbol represents not just an idea, but the feeling associated with that idea. You have to approach it like poetry rather than mathematics. Together, they began working to decode the palace's control systems, with Marcus translating symbols while Dr. Hassan identified critical system nodes. The Zarathi consciousness watched their progress with growing alarm, realizing that their carefully planned restoration might be threatened by the very cooperation they had sought to create. And, in the depths of the palace, the beacon continued charging toward transmission, counting down the moments until 47,000 sleeping hybrids across the galaxy would hear the call to awaken. The beacon transmitted its signal at exactly 1500 hours, Europa time, sending a quantum pulse across the galaxy that would take days to reach the most distant Zarathi ruins. Marcus felt the moment of activation like a physical blow, the Zarathi consciousness surging with triumph, while his human mind recoiled in horror at what they had failed to prevent. Dr. Hassan's attempt to overload the central processing core had come tantalizingly close to success. They had managed to decode enough of the control systems to identify the beacon's power source and transmission array, but the security protocols protecting the equipment were more sophisticated than either of them had anticipated. Every attempt to shut down or sabotage the system had been met with countermeasures that seemed to anticipate their actions. "The signal is away," the primary Zarathi voice announced with satisfaction. "Our children across the galaxy will hear our call within the next 72 hours. The restoration begins now." Marcus slumped against the fountain, exhausted from hours of fighting for control of his own body. The alien consciousness had not forced complete submission, but they had prevented him from taking any action that would seriously threaten their plans. It was a compromise that satisfied no one and left both sides feeling betrayed. Dr. Hassan continued working at the control panel, her scanner array displaying incoming data from human monitoring stations throughout the solar system. "The transmission was detected by at least 6 deep space observation posts," she reported. "They're classifying it as an unknown xenological event, Priority Alpha classification. The Colonial Defense Force will have ships en route within hours." "It doesn't matter," Marcus said wearily. "By the time they arrive, the damage will be done." The beacon wasn't just a wake-up call for dormant hybrids. It was also a data burst containing updated instructions and coordination protocols. Every transformed human in the galaxy now knows their role in rebuilding the Zarathi Empire. Through the shared consciousness, Marcus could access the information that had been transmitted with the signal. The scope of the Zarathi plan was even more extensive than he had realized. They hadn't just been creating random hybrids over the centuries. They had been carefully selecting individuals with specific skills, knowledge, and positions of influence within human society. Politicians, military officers, scientists, engineers, communication specialists. The Zarathi had targeted key personnel across all sectors of human civilization. When the signal reached them, they would begin coordinating efforts to gradually shift human policy and research priorities in directions that would benefit their alien masters. "It's not an invasion," Marcus explained as the full picture became clear to him. "It's a transformation of human civilization from within. They don't want to conquer us. They want to become us, to merge our species into something that serves their purposes." Dr. Hassan looked up from her scanner, her face pale with the implications. "How long before the transformation is complete?" "Decades, maybe generations," Marcus replied, accessing the Zarathi strategic timelines. "They're patient. They've waited 1,000 years for this opportunity, and they're willing to wait longer if necessary to do it right. Then, we still have time to warn people, to prepare defenses." "Do we?" Marcus asked. "Who's going to believe us? And even if they do, how do you fight an enemy that looks exactly like you, thinks like you, and might not even know they're compromised?" The Zarathi consciousness stirred with amusement at his pessimism. "Your species will adapt to the changes gradually, just as you have adapted to countless evolutionary pressures throughout your history. In time, the distinction between human and Zarathi will become meaningless. We will all be one people, sharing one purpose." "And what purpose is that?" Marcus demanded. "Survival," came the simple reply. "Your species is young, impulsive, prone to self-destructive behaviors that threaten not only yourselves, but the stability of this entire region of the galaxy. Under our guidance, humanity will mature into something worthy of the cosmic inheritance we offer." Dr. Hassan had been monitoring the exchange with her scanner, watching the play of energy patterns in Marcus's nervous system as he communicated with the alien intelligence. "The symbiosis is deeper than I thought," she murmured. "You're not just sharing conscious thoughts. You're beginning to merge at the cellular level." Marcus looked down at his hands, and saw that the patterns of light beneath his skin had become more complex, forming geometric designs that pulsed in harmony with his heartbeat. His reflection in the crystal walls showed eyes that glowed with an inner fire, and when he spoke, there were harmonics in his voice that hadn't been there before. How long before the transformation is irreversible? Dr. Hassan asked. It already is, Marcus admitted. The question is whether I can retain enough of my humanity to influence what I become. Before Dr. Hassan could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. The crystal walls flickered with warning patterns, and automated systems came online to assess and respond to whatever threat had been detected. Through his enhanced senses, Marcus could perceive the approach of multiple spacecraft, moving fast and broadcasting military identification codes. The Colonial Defense Force, Dr. Hassan said, reading the transmission data on her scanner. They're sending a full battle group to investigate the quantum pulse. Marcus felt the Zarathi consciousness analyzing the approaching threat. The alien intelligence was utterly calm, as if the arrival of human warships was merely an interesting development rather than a potentially catastrophic problem. They pose no significant danger, the primary voice observed. Their weapons cannot penetrate our defensive systems, and their scanning technology is insufficient to understand the true nature of our work here. You're underestimating them, Marcus warned. Humans are good at adapting quickly to new threats. They won't come here unprepared. Perhaps not, the Zarathi agreed. But they will come, and that presents us with an opportunity. The implications of that statement sent a chill through Marcus's human consciousness. The approaching warships carried thousands of crew members, many of whom would inevitably be brought aboard the palace for investigation and questioning. If the Zarathi had found a way to speed up the transformation process, or to create artificial fountains using the technology now active within the palace. You can't, Marcus said aloud. Those are innocent people doing their jobs. They are potential hybrid candidates, the Zarathi replied. We have identified 17 individuals among the approaching fleet who carry the necessary genetic markers. Their transformation would significantly accelerate our plans. Dr. Hassan overheard the exchange and immediately began working to re-establish communication with the approaching ships. CDF Battle Group 7. This is Dr. Sarah Hassan broadcasting from the Zarathi Palace on Europa. Do not send personnel to the surface. The site is compromised and extremely dangerous. Static answered her transmission attempts. The palace was jamming all outgoing communications, ensuring that the approaching military forces would have no warning of the threat waiting for them. Marcus, Dr. Hassan said urgently, you have to help me get through to them. Whatever influence you have with the Zarathi consciousness, you need to use it now. Marcus closed his eyes and reached deep into the shared mental space he occupied with the alien intelligence. The battle for control of his actions had been ongoing for hours, but now he needed to find a different approach. Instead of fighting against the Zarathi consciousness, he tried to understand it, to find common ground that might allow for genuine cooperation. You want to survive, Marcus said. That's the core motivation behind everything you do. But forcing transformation on unwilling subjects won't create the kind of symbiosis you need. It will create resentment, resistance, and eventually rebellion. Explain, the primary voice commanded. Humans value choice above almost everything else, Marcus replied. We'll accept incredible hardships and sacrifices if we believe we chose them freely. But if you force changes on us, even beneficial ones, we'll fight against them with everything we have. Through the shared consciousness, Marcus projected images and concepts from human history, revolutions against tyranny, resistance movements during wartime, the countless examples of people choosing death over submission. The Zarathi found these memories fascinating but troubling, unable to understand why any rational being would choose suffering over obvious improvement. Your species is irrational, the collective voice observed. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but that irrationality has also made us survivors. We're the only known species to develop spaceflight while actively engaged in global warfare. We colonized hostile worlds without understanding the science that made it possible. We've thrived in situations that should have destroyed us because we're too stubborn to give up. Dr. Hassan watched the energy patterns in Marcus's nervous system shift as he continued his argument with the alien consciousness. The geometric designs were becoming more fluid, more organic, suggesting that the symbiosis was evolving in real time. The approaching ships, Marcus continued, represent everything that's best about humanity. They're coming here because they detected an unknown signal and decided to investigate, not because they want to conquer or destroy anything. They're explorers and protectors, the kind of people who would make ideal partners rather than subjects. Partners. The concept clearly intrigued the Zarathi collective. Equals, Marcus clarified. Beings who choose to work with you because they see the benefits of cooperation, not because they've been forced into submission. The alien consciousness fell silent for several minutes, engaged in high-speed consultation with other members of their collective. Marcus could sense the debate raging among them, with factions arguing for immediate expansion versus more gradual integration approaches. Meanwhile, the approaching battle group had established orbit around Europa and was preparing to send down investigation teams. Dr. Hassan's scanner showed 6 transport vessels launching from the capital ships, carrying scientific personnel and military escorts to examine the source of the quantum transmission. Decision reached, the primary voice finally announced. We will permit limited contact with the approaching humans. A small number will be allowed to enter the palace and observe our work. If they demonstrate suitable compatibility and express willingness to undergo voluntary transformation, we will proceed. If not, they will be allowed to leave unharmed. You're serious? Marcus asked, hardly daring to believe that the Zarathi would actually honor such an agreement. We have learned much from our connection with you, the collective voice replied. Perhaps there is wisdom in your species' approach to cooperation. We will attempt this partnership and observe the results. Dr. Hassan had been listening to the entire exchange. I need to establish contact with the investigation teams before they land, she said. If we can control the initial contact, we might be able to set up something approaching genuine first contact protocols. The jamming will cease in 30 seconds, the Zarathi announced. You will have a brief window to establish communication. True to their word, the interference with outgoing transmissions suddenly stopped. Dr. Hassan immediately activated her emergency beacon and began broadcasting on all Colonial Defense Force frequencies. CDF investigation teams. This is Dr. Sarah Hassan on the surface. I am safe and currently in contact with active xenological intelligence. Repeat, we have established first contact with alien consciousness. Request immediate consultation with diplomatic and scientific authorities before landing parties approach the surface. The response was immediate and predictably chaotic. Multiple voices began talking at once, demanding clarification and requesting status reports. Through it all, Marcus could hear the voice of someone with command authority trying to restore order to the communication channels. Dr. Hassan, this is Admiral Chun commanding Battle Group 7. Please confirm your status and the nature of the alleged alien contact. Marcus felt a jolt of recognition at the name, followed by a surge of complex emotions from the Zarathi consciousness. Admiral Chun was one of the 17 individuals in the fleet who carried the genetic markers for transformation. More than that, she was someone whose strategic knowledge and position within the Colonial Defense Force made her an incredibly valuable potential hybrid. The Admiral is family, the Zarathi observed. Your genetic markers come from a shared lineage. Her transformation would be particularly compatible with your existing symbiosis. She's my sister, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him. Lisa Chun, my older sister who joined the military instead of drifting around the galaxy doing maintenance work. The cosmic irony of the situation was overwhelming. Of all the ships that could have responded to the quantum beacon, it had been the one commanded by Marcus's own sister, someone he hadn't seen in years, but who remained one of the few people he genuinely cared about. This changes everything, Marcus murmured, and both the human and Zarathi aspects of his consciousness found themselves in complete agreement for the first time since the transformation began. Dr. Hassan looked at him with concern. What is it? The Admiral commanding the response fleet, Marcus said. She's my sister. The scanner array registered massive energy buildup throughout the palace as the Zarathi collective focused their attention on this unexpected development. Hidden systems came online, defensive protocols activated, and the entire structure prepared itself for what might be the most important negotiation in the history of both species. Admiral Chun, Dr. Hassan broadcast, we need to establish formal diplomatic protocols immediately. The situation here is far more complex than a simple xenological discovery. We're dealing with the potential for either the greatest cooperation or the greatest catastrophe in human history. Admiral Lisa Chun materialized on the palace landing pad exactly 6 hours after receiving Dr. Hassan's transmission, accompanied by a diplomatic team that included xenobiologists, linguists, and cultural specialists. Marcus watched their approach through the crystal walls, his enhanced vision allowing him to observe details that would have been invisible to normal human sight. Lisa looked exactly as he remembered her, tall, confident, carrying herself with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. But, through the Zarathi consciousness, Marcus could perceive so much more. He could see the genetic markers in her cellular structure, the neural pathways that would make her compatible with alien symbiosis, and the electromagnetic patterns that marked her as a natural leader. She is exceptional, the Zarathi collective observed. Her integration would create a hybrid with significant influence over human military and political structures. She's my sister, Marcus replied firmly. Whatever happens here, she gets to choose for herself. The alien consciousness stirred with what might have been amusement. You continue to anthropomorphize our relationship. Choice is an illusion created by limited perspective. All beings act according to their nature and circumstances. Then, let's make sure her circumstances include all the relevant information. Dr. Hassan had spent the hours before the diplomatic team's arrival preparing briefing materials and establishing communication protocols with the Zarathi consciousness. The alien intelligence had agreed to permit direct contact, but only under carefully controlled conditions that would minimize the risk of accidental transformation. Admiral Chun, Dr. Hassan broadcast as the team approached the palace entrance. Before you enter the structure, you need to understand what you're walking into. The alien intelligence inhabiting this facility is capable of biological transformation of humans. One member of the maintenance team has already undergone the process, and he remains conscious and cooperative but fundamentally altered. Copy that, Dr. Hassan. Lisa's voice came back crisp and professional. We've brought full biological containment protocols. Is the transformed individual cooperative? Marcus stepped forward to answer for himself. Hello, Lisa. Yes, I'm cooperative. I'm also still your little brother, despite some significant changes in my biology. The silence that followed lasted nearly 30 seconds. Marcus could imagine the conversations happening on the command channel as the diplomatic team tried to process the implications of the situation. Marcus! Lisa's voice finally came through, stripped of its professional composure. What are you doing here? Working a cleaning contract for SRC, Marcus replied. At least, I was until I decided to drink from an alien fountain and accidentally became the bridge between two civilizations. Jesus, Marcus. Only you could stumble into first contact while doing maintenance work. Despite the gravity of the situation, Marcus found himself smiling. Lisa's exasperated affection was exactly the same as it had been when they were children, when his curiosity had regularly gotten him into situations that required her help to escape. The diplomatic team entered the palace with appropriate caution, their environmental suits sealed, and their sensor equipment active. Dr. Hassan met them in the entrance chamber and began explaining the situation while Marcus remained in the central fountain room, giving his sister time to process the initial briefing. Through the shared consciousness, Marcus could feel the Zarathi collective studying the new arrivals with intense interest. They were analyzing speech patterns, body language, and bioelectric readings, building psychological profiles that would help them understand how to approach each individual. The Admiral possesses remarkable emotional control, the primary voice observed. She experiences fear and uncertainty, but does not permit these emotions to compromise her decision-making processes. Such discipline would be valuable in a hybrid agent. She's trained for this, Marcus explained. Military officers spend years learning to function effectively under stress. It's not that she doesn't feel emotions, she just doesn't let them control her actions. Fascinating. Your species continues to surprise us with its adaptability. When the diplomatic team finally entered the central chamber, Marcus was struck by how small and fragile they looked in a vast space. The palace around them hummed with alien energy, crystal walls displaying flowing patterns of light that responded to the presence of the visitors. It was a beautiful and terrifying display of power that made it clear they were standing inside a machine beyond their comprehension. Lisa removed her helmet once her environmental readings confirmed the atmosphere was safe, revealing features that strongly resembled Marcus's own, but with the added confidence that came from years of command responsibility. She looked at her transformed brother for a long moment, taking in the patterns of light beneath his skin and the subtle changes in his posture and bearing. "You look different," she said simply. "I feel different," Marcus replied. "The Zarathi consciousness is sharing my mind, and our biology is slowly integrating. I'm becoming something new. Are you still you?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Mostly. The core of who I am is still intact, but my capabilities and knowledge have expanded enormously. I can understand technologies that were completely foreign to me a week ago, perceive reality in ways that humans aren't naturally equipped for, and communicate directly with a collective intelligence that spans multiple dimensions of existence." Dr. Chun, the xenobiologist on the diplomatic team, stepped forward with her scanner array active. "The readings are incredible," she said. "Mr. Chin's neural activity is operating at levels that should be impossible for human neurology, but his brain structure appears stable and healthy. The transformation enhances rather than replaces human capabilities," Marcus explained. "The Zarathi don't want to destroy humanity. They want to elevate it. To serve their purposes," Admiral Chin observed. "Dr. Hassan briefed us on their plans for galactic restoration. They're not offering partnership. They're offering servitude with better benefits." "That was true initially," Marcus admitted. "But the situation has evolved. The Zarathi are learning as much from human psychology as we're learning from their technology. They're beginning to understand concepts like cooperation and mutual benefit that were foreign to their previous existence." The primary Zarathi voice spoke then, using Marcus as a conduit, but making it clear that the words came from the alien consciousness. "Admiral Chun, we greet you as a potential partner in a great work. Your species possesses qualities that we have lost during our ascension: creativity, emotional depth, the ability to find meaning in temporary existence. We offer shared knowledge and capabilities in exchange for the return of these gifts." Admiral Chun studied Marcus carefully, clearly trying to determine how much of what she was hearing represented her brother's thoughts versus alien manipulation. "What do you want from us specifically?" "Voluntary cooperation in the restoration of our civilization," the Zarathi replied. "We do not seek conquest or subjugation, but rather the creation of a hybrid culture that combines the best aspects of both species. And if we refuse, then we will wait, as we have waited for 1,000 years. Your species is young and will in time come to understand the benefits of partnership. We are patient." Dr. Hassan stepped forward. "Admiral, there's something else you need to know. The beacon transmitted activation codes to dormant hybrids throughout human space. We're looking at tens of thousands of transformed individuals who will begin coordinating efforts to influence human policy and development." "A shadow government," Admiral Chun said grimly. "Alien agents embedded in human society." "Potential partners," Marcus corrected. "People like me who retain their human consciousness while gaining access to Zarathi knowledge and abilities. They could help guide humanity toward a more sustainable and prosperous future, under alien oversight, under hybrid leadership. There's a difference." Admiral Chun walked to the fountain at the center of the chamber, studying the alien water that had started the transformation process. "Dr. Hassan says you drank from this willingly?" "I was thirsty," Marcus said. "I had no idea what would happen, but I made the choice to drink. Everything that followed was a consequence of that decision. And if I were to drink from it now, knowing the consequences..." Marcus felt the Zarathi consciousness surge with excitement at the possibility, but he forced himself to consider the question objectively. "You would undergo the same transformation I did, but with the benefit of understanding what was happening. The process would likely be less traumatic, and you would have more success in maintaining your individual identity within the symbiosis. The enhancement of your capabilities would be extraordinary," the Zarathi added through Marcus's voice. "Military strategy, logistics, personnel management. All of these skills would be magnified by access to our collective knowledge and analytical capabilities." Admiral Chin nodded slowly. "And I would become an advocate for Zarathi interests within the human military command structure." "You would become an advocate for the interests of both species," Marcus replied. "The transformation doesn't eliminate human loyalty. It expands it to encompass a larger perspective." "Show me," Admiral Chin said suddenly. I want to communicate directly with the Zarathi consciousness, without you as an intermediary. Marcus felt the alien intelligence considering the request. Direct communication with an unenhanced human was possible, but required establishing a temporary neural link that carried some risk of accidental transformation. It can be done, the Zarathi said, but the process involves partial integration of our consciousness with yours. There is a small possibility that the integration could become permanent. Acceptable risk, Admiral Chun replied without hesitation. I need to understand what I'm dealing with before I can make any decisions. Dr. Hassan looked alarmed. Admiral, I strongly advise against this. We don't understand the long-term effects of Zarathi consciousness integration. The risk is minimal, Marcus assured her. I can serve as a buffer, helping to control the depth of the connection. Lisa will experience Zarathi thought processes without undergoing biological transformation. Admiral Chun approached Marcus and placed her hand on his shoulder. The moment of contact created a circuit that allowed the Zarathi consciousness to flow through Marcus and into his sister's mind. The connection lasted only seconds, but in that time, Lisa experienced a flood of alien knowledge and perspective. She saw the galaxy as the Zarathi saw it, a vast network of energy and matter that could be shaped and directed according to intelligent will. She felt the loneliness of beings who had transcended physical existence only to discover that consciousness without form was a hollow victory. She understood their genuine desire to reclaim life and sensation while sharing the wisdom they had accumulated during their long exile from the material world. When the connection ended, Admiral Chun staggered back, her eyes wide with shock and wonder. They're not lying, she whispered. They really do want partnership, not conquest. But they're also desperate. They've been isolated for so long that they've forgotten how to relate to other forms of consciousness. That's why the hybrid program is so important to them, Marcus explained. We're not just servants or vessels. We're teachers, showing them how to live and feel again. Admiral Chun was quiet for several minutes, processing what she had experienced. The other members of the diplomatic team waited anxiously, understanding that her decision would likely determine the future relationship between humanity and the Zarathi. I have conditions, Admiral Chun finally said. State them. The Zarathi replied through Marcus. The transformation process must always be voluntary, with full informed consent. No deception, no coercion, no acidental exposures. Anyone who chooses to undergo the process must be able to refuse without consequences. Agreed. Existing hybrids must be allowed to maintain contact with their human families and communities. No severing of emotional bonds or social connections. This is also acceptable, and there must be ongoing oversight by joint human-Zarathi committees to ensure that the partnership remains genuinely mutual. No secret agendas, no hidden manipulation of human policy. Your terms are reasonable, the Zarathi acknowledged. We accept these conditions. Admiral Chun looked at Marcus. What about you? If I agree to this partnership, will you consider returning to Earth for debriefing and consultation? Marcus felt the Zarathi consciousness withdrawing slightly, giving him space to make his own decision. I can't go back to being fully human, he said. The transformation is irreversible, but I could serve as a liaison, helping to establish communication protocols and training programs for other potential hybrids. Then, we have a basis for negotiation, Admiral Chun said. I'll need to consult with Earth Command, but I'm prepared to recommend proceeding with formal diplomatic contact. Dr. Hassan looked relieved. So we're not looking at an invasion scenario? We're looking at the most significant evolutionary leap in human history, Admiral Chun replied. Whether that turns out to be a blessing or a catastrophe remains to be seen. As the diplomatic team prepared to return to their ships to make their reports, Marcus felt a profound sense of hope. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time since his transformation, he believed that both species might find a way to coexist and thrive together. The Zarathi had spent 1,000 years waiting for this moment. Humanity was about to discover whether they were ready for the responsibility of cosmic citizenship. 6 months after first contact, Marcus stood before the assembled delegates of the Galactic Council in the newly constructed diplomatic center on Luna. The facility was a marvel of hybrid architecture, incorporating both human engineering and Zarathi crystal technology to create something that neither species could have built alone. Crystalline walls provided structural support, while human-designed life support systems maintained an environment suitable for both baseline humans and the growing population of human-Zarathi hybrids. The transformation of human civilization had proceeded more rapidly than anyone had anticipated. The beacon's activation had indeed awakened thousands of dormant hybrids across human space. But instead of the coordinated takeover that Admiral Chun had initially feared, what emerged was a complex network of individuals struggling to balance their enhanced capabilities with their remaining human loyalties. Marcus had become the de facto leader of this hybrid community, not through any alien appointment, but because his unique position as the first voluntary transformation made him trusted by both sides of his dual nature. Through him, the Zarathi collective learned to understand human concepts like democracy, individual rights, and the value of dissent. Meanwhile, humanity began to grasp the enormous potential of cooperative consciousness and shared knowledge. The integration process has exceeded all projections, Dr. Hassan reported to the assembled delegates. She had declined transformation herself, choosing instead to serve as the primary researcher studying the effects of human-Zarathi symbiosis. Hybrid individuals demonstrate enhanced cognitive abilities, extended lifespans, and immunity to most known diseases. More importantly, they retain full human emotional range and personal identity. Admiral Chun, now serving as the military liaison for hybrid affairs, added her own observations. From a strategic perspective, the hybrid population has proven to be humanity's greatest asset. Their ability to interface directly with Zarathi technology has accelerated our scientific development by centuries. We now have faster-than-light communication across the galaxy, energy sources that make fusion power look primitive, and medical technology that can repair damage at the cellular level. The delegates from the outer colonies were less enthusiastic. Representative Williams from the Tau Ceti system stood to voice concerns that had been growing among the baseline human population. All of this progress comes at the cost of fundamental changes to human nature itself. We're asking people to give up their biological heritage, to accept alien consciousness into their minds. How do we know that the beings we're creating are still truly human? Marcus felt the familiar tension that arose whenever this question was raised. Through the shared consciousness, he could sense the Zarathi collective's confusion at the human obsession with species purity. To beings who had transcended physical form entirely, the idea that minor biological modifications could threaten essential identity was incomprehensible. "I can only speak for myself," Marcus replied, stepping forward to address the assembly. "I am still Marcus Chun. I remember my childhood on Earth, my years drifting between jobs, the moment I decided to drink from the fountain. Those memories and experiences form the core of who I am. The Zarathi consciousness adds to that foundation. It doesn't replace it. But you're not entirely human anymore," Representative Williams pressed. "You have abilities that no natural human possesses, access to knowledge that no individual mind should contain. How can we trust that your decisions are made in humanity's best interests?" "Because humanity's interests are my interests," Marcus replied. "The Zarathi don't want to eliminate humanity. They want to learn from it. Every hybrid carries human values and perspectives into the collective consciousness. We're not becoming less human. We're helping the Zarathi become more like us." Dr. Elizabeth Grant, the xenobiologist who had taken over much of the research into hybrid biology, stood to present her latest findings. Representative Williams raises important points, but our research suggests that the transformation process actually reinforces human psychological patterns rather than eliminating them. Hybrid individuals show enhanced empathy, stronger emotional connections to their communities, and greater concern for the welfare of baseline humans. She activated a holographic display showing brain scans of hybrid individuals. The Zarathi consciousness doesn't overwrite human neural patterns. It integrates with them, creating new pathways while preserving existing ones. The result is a mind that thinks faster and perceives more clearly, but still dreams, still loves, still makes irrational decisions based on emotion rather than pure logic. Admiral Chun nodded in agreement. The military applications alone justify the transformation program. Hybrid officers can process tactical information at superhuman speeds while maintaining the intuition and creativity that makes human strategists effective. They're not cold alien calculators. They're humans with enhanced capabilities. The debate continued for hours, touching on philosophical questions that had no easy answers. Was genetic enhancement a form of evolution or a betrayal of human nature? Could a species maintain its identity while incorporating alien consciousness? What safeguards were needed to prevent the gradual replacement of baseline humans with hybrid alternatives? Marcus listened to the arguments while simultaneously participating in the vast conversation that flowed through the hybrid collective. Thousands of voices shared thoughts and experiences, creating a kind of democracy of consciousness that operated at speeds beyond normal human comprehension. Yet, even in this accelerated forum, the fundamental questions remain the same. We need to address the fundamental fear underlying these debates, Marcus said during a break in the formal proceedings. People are afraid that we're going to lose what makes us human. But what makes us human isn't our biology. It's our capacity for growth, for learning, for becoming more than we were. Dr. Hassan approached him with a thoughtful expression. The Zarathi are changing too, aren't they? The collective consciousness isn't the same as it was 6 months ago. No, it's not, Marcus admitted. Human emotions and perspectives are propagating through the network. The Zarathi are rediscovering concepts like humor, compassion, and individual identity. Some of them are choosing to separate from the collective entirely, to experience individual existence for the first time in millennia. This was perhaps the most surprising development of the entire integration process. As human consciousness flowed into the Zarathi collective, it was triggering a kind of renaissance of individuality among beings who had long since merged into a unified whole. Some Zarathi were choosing to inhabit hybrid bodies, becoming individuals in their own right rather than facets of a larger intelligence. Ambassador Zarthal would like to address the assembly, Marcus announced, referring to one of the first Zarathi to achieve individual consciousness. The being that had once been part of the collective now existed as a distinct personality within the hybrid network, able to communicate directly with humans while maintaining access to Zarathi knowledge. The ambassador's voice came through Marcus, but with subtle differences in tone and cadence that marked it as distinctly non-human. Honored delegates, we understand your concerns about the preservation of human identity. We share similar concerns about the preservation of Zarathi wisdom and purpose. The solution we propose is not the replacement of one species with another, but the creation of something that honors both. The hybrid community represents the future of both our civilizations, the ambassador continued. We are not conquering humanity, we are joining it. And humanity is not being absorbed by an alien collective. It is teaching us how to be individuals again. Representative Williams remained skeptical. What guarantees do we have that this cooperation will continue? What happens when the interests of hybrids diverge from the interests of baseline humans? Marcus felt the weight of the question, knowing that his answer would likely determine the future of human-Zarathi relations. Through the shared consciousness, he could sense the attention of thousands of hybrid individuals and millions of Zarathi intelligences, all waiting to see how he would respond. There are no guarantees, Marcus said honestly, but there never have been. Humanity has always been a species in transition, adapting to new challenges and opportunities. The hybrid program is just the next step in that evolution. The choice remains with each individual, he continued. No one is forced to undergo transformation. Baseline humans will continue to be the majority of our species for generations to come. But for those who choose enhancement, we offer the possibility of becoming something greater than either of our parent species could achieve alone. Admiral Chun stood to make the final presentation of the day. The Colonial Defense Force has proposed a new framework for human-Zarathi cooperation. Hybrid individuals would serve as liaisons and coordinators, but baseline humans would retain control of all major policy decisions. We're not talking about replacement, we're talking about cooperation. The hybrid population would function as a bridge between species, facilitating communication and understanding while preserving the autonomy of both civilizations, she explained. Think of it as a permanent diplomatic corps with the ability to truly understand both sides of any negotiation. As the formal session concluded, Marcus found himself standing alone in the observation deck of the diplomatic center, looking out at the Earth rising over Luna's horizon. The planet looked exactly as it always had, but he knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and they were no longer entirely human. Through the hybrid network, He could sense the ongoing conversation among his transformed peers. They were debating philosophy and science, sharing experiences and emotions, creating new art and literature that reflected their dual nature. They were becoming something unprecedented, a species that was simultaneously individual and collective, human and alien, temporal and eternal. Dr. Hassan joined him at the observation window. "Any regrets?" she asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. The transformation had cost him his original humanity, his ability to live a simple, anonymous life. But it had also given him purpose, connection, and the chance to help shape the future of two civilizations. "None," he said finally. "I was just a maintenance worker before, drifting from one job to the next without any real direction. Now I'm part of something larger than myself, something that might actually matter in the long run. The Zarathi consciousness. Do you ever miss being alone in your own mind?" "Sometimes," Marcus admitted, "but I've never been alone since the transformation. Even when I'm physically isolated, I'm connected to thousands of other minds, sharing thoughts and experiences across impossible distances. It's overwhelming sometimes, but it's also beautiful." 6 months later, the first generation of voluntary hybrids graduated from the Luna facility and dispersed throughout human space. They carried with them not only enhanced capabilities, but also the responsibility of proving that cooperation between species was possible. Some returned to their original careers, using their new abilities to advance human science and culture. Others chose to explore the galaxy, seeking new worlds and civilizations to contact and understand. Marcus remained on Luna as the director of the Hybrid Integration Program, overseeing the transformation of volunteers while continuing to serve as the primary liaison with the Zarathi Collective. Each new hybrid brought unique perspectives and abilities to the growing community, creating a kind of living laboratory for the study of consciousness and identity. The voice that had once warned him about becoming something unknown now spoke with familiarity and affection. The Zarathi consciousness had learned to appreciate human concepts like friendship and loyalty, while Marcus had gained access to cosmic perspectives that put human concerns into a much larger context. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Marcus asked during one of their regular conversations. "Choice implies alternatives that we did not have," the Zarathi replied. "Your species was always destined to encounter us eventually. The question was whether that encounter would result in mutual enrichment or mutual destruction. And what do you think will happen in the long term?"